This is the Good Neighbor Podcast, the place where local businesses and neighbors come together. Here's your host, Scott Howell.
Well, hello, good neighbors, and welcome to the Good Neighbor Podcast, brought to you by the Friends and Neighbors Group of the Greater Chattanooga area. My name is Scott Howell, and I'm your host today. You know, the purpose of the Good Neighbor Podcast, as we're often asked, is to bring awareness to the residents living in our communities regarding the locally owned and or operated businesses in the Greater Chattanooga area. You know, we try to encompass that area, including Cleveland and Dalton and Jasper to Benton, you know, everything in between. It's all the part of the Greater Chattanooga area. And, you know, all of our communities were built, the backbone of our communities, if I can put it that way, were built on small local businesses. Now sometimes medium-sized local businesses that built our communities, and they still need our support. And, you know, every local business has a story to tell, and we just desire to help them say it loud and proud today to all you listeners out there. So, and today we've got our good neighbor, Shawn Williamson from Legacy Funeral Home with us. And Shawn, I can say it's my utmost pleasure to have you on the podcast with us today. So thank you for being our special guest.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been excited about talking to Shawn for a while. I'm all day long. I've been trying to remember where I initially saw a story about you. It was in print. I remember that. It might have been on the internet, but it was in print. It wasn't a video or anything. And I saw a video of you later where you were interviewed by a news channel. But what I read was just really piqued my interest. And I like to start off by saying, Shawn, I know you are the owner of Legacy Funeral Home. And in Wann Funeral Home, you purchased Wann Funeral Home, right? One of the oldest ones in Chattanooga.
That's correct.
And so you own both of those now. So, and, you know, growing up, you know, my family was always very involved in going to the funeral home, or I even remember back when the funeral homes brought the bodies out to people's houses. And I remember that, you know, it was getting more rare, but then you go down to the funeral home and you go to the funeral, and I remember all the undertakers, all that they used to call them. Now they call them funeral directors. I remember how that it was always kind of amazing to me how they just knew exactly what to do, when to do it, and they were so, you know, kind and polite and it seemed very formal a lot of times, you know, during the ceremony, the things they did, and it just always kind of amazed me. But growing up, I'm going to have to admit, the only time I ever saw a woman in the funeral home was at the desk when you walked in the door behind the receptionist. And then, you know, as I got a little older, began to see more women included in the funeral directing and stuff like that. Still not a lot. And then I read this story about this lady named Shawn Williamson, who was one of the youngest ever in the state of Tennessee, I think it was. I'm going to let you tell the story, but that had gotten her license. And I read this and I'm like, wow, okay. And something you got to know about me, Shawn, I'm very pro woman, business owners and all things, just a lot of things. And I guess it stems from the fact that I was raised by a single mother. You know, my daddy got killed when I was young, and for 10 years she was single. And, you know, I saw her struggles. And when I see women succeeding, it really excites me for you, you know. And so I just wanted to talk to you today about your journey. I think people would be very interested to know about your journey, how you came about being in this business, how you came about being the owners of where you are now. Just kind of bring us through that.
Sure. Well, thank you so much. I'm very pro women too, because I think it's so important to have women out there also. You know, you don't see a lot of women, and I have people run into me all the time and they're just shocked that, you know, I'm the owner, the funeral director, or the prettiest hearse driver they've ever seen, things like that. But it's kind of a crazy story how I got into the funeral industry. I wanted to be a vet. I have a huge passion for animals, which is the reason we just opened a pet funeral home and crematory. I don't know if Jamie went over that with you on his podcast, but
he did, but I want you to share all that too. So
yeah. But I have a huge passion for animals and I wanted to be a vet. And so I went to a school to work program, and my teacher said, you know, what the point of it is, you go out and find a job and you work there and then you decide if you like it or however it works. And I lived in a very small town, about 4,000 people. So one vet's office, just one doctor's office, one of everything. Yeah. And I went to the vet's office and said, hey, I want a job shadow this semester. And they were like, hey, we already have a student here this semester, but you can come back next semester if you want. So I was like, great, this is going to work out. So I went back and told my teacher, and he said, not so great. You either find a job or you fail the class because you're too late into the semester. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I'm, upset because I'm a good student. And so I'm talking to my friend about it. Well, her parents own the funeral home. And she said, you know what? Just tell them you're going to work at the funeral home, and Mama will sign a paper saying you've been here for the class, and let's just get through it, And I was like, are you sure? Like, I don't know. I don't want to work at the funeral home. And so anyway, 14 years old, I went to work at the funeral home, and I would just vacuum the carpet if they needed it. And I always tell people you learn really quickly being around a funeral home. You don't sit around. Like, if you're coming just to hang out, they're going to put you to work. You're going to be doing something. So anyway, I just fell in love with the funeral industry at that point. I had worked on like the living side of it, working with, families and helping them through, carrying flowers, typing death certificates, but just being there for people because I'm such an empathetic person. It really like warmed my heart. So, and in the meantime of that, my dog got hit by a car, and I went to the vet to watch him get sewed up, and I passed out. So I was like, maybe I shouldn't be a vet. Maybe this isn't going to work. So I continued working at the funeral home through my high school years. And then I'm an August baby. So I was kind of the youngest one in my class. I really probably should have waited till the next year. But I graduated high school when I was 17. Okay. So I went ahead and started mortuary school right out of high school, and my mom had to sign paperwork letting me go to class, and because I wasn't 18 and I was seeing embalmings and autopsies and things that you're really not allowed to see it when you're 17. And so anyway, I just flew right through mortuary school. I was so excited. I wanted to be the best funeral director there could be, and graduated right out of college and went straight for my licenses and was the youngest funeral director to ever be licensed, and female too, because at that time there was hardly any women in the industry.
How old were you at that time?
I would have been, I would have to think. I probably had just turned 19 because my birthday's in August and I graduated in December. So. Wow.
19 years old. And, and you're in the funeral home business. So did you continue working for that family?
I did. I worked for them for a couple more years, and I met my husband in college in mortuary school, and he was from Chattanooga. I was from Kentucky, and we weren't sure that we were going to be married yet or what we were going to do. We were still dating, and so I lived there. He lived here, and then finally we made the decision to move here. Well, he worked for a corporate funeral home, and corporate funeral homes will not hire couples because if one person's out, then they're both going to be out and all that kind of stuff. Right. So I started a florist. I was like, you know what? I can't be in the funeral business, but I'll be close to the funeral business. So I started a florist, and I worked in the florist until we built our funeral home in 2006.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So is your husband involved in your funeral home, or does he still work elsewhere?
Sadly, we had a COVID divorce, and so he is no longer in the industry. Yeah, he's no longer here, but we built both of our businesses together.
Okay, I apologize. I did not know that.
That's okay. That's fine.
Yeah. So you mentioned Jamie a while ago, so we don't drop that, and people wonder what it is. If you haven't, all the listeners out there, if you haven't went yet and listened to the podcast that I did on Legacy and Wann Funeral Home with the general manager, which works for Shawn, his name is Jamie Eggert. If you haven't watched that, please do, because I tell you what, you talk about hearing passion in a man's voice. That he believes in what he does and believes in Shawn Williamson and believes in, taking care of folks and making sure folks have all the comfort that he can help provide them. You need to listen to his podcast. Shawn, I was telling Shawn today, I said, wow, man, I know you got to be proud to have that guy on your staff. I mean, he was a Methodist minister for many years and then retired and went to work for Shawn, and you can just hear the passion in his voice. I know you're glad to have him, Shawn.
Oh, I couldn't make it without him. Him and my entire staff is wonderful, but Jamie especially, I call him my emotional support person because he's always there for me. But him and my secretary, Frankie, they are both just hung the moon.
Well, I hadn't had a chance to meet Frankie, but I tell you, I was very Very impressed with Jamie. Very impressed.
Right.
So now you come down to here. You're the youngest one ever. You finally make it to Chattanooga, and here you are, and you start your funeral home legacy. How was it starting a funeral home from scratch? How did that go? People know you. People, sometimes people. I've known of people before that worked for a funeral home, and then they left that funeral home and started their own, and people already knew them in that industry and kind of had that following because they already liked them. How was it starting one from scratch?
So my husband, like I told you, he had worked in a corporate funeral home he had worked there for a lot of years. His family had deep roots. He was a 5th generation. And so, a lot of people was very excited to have a locally owned funeral home back in the community. So we actually opened our doors May 1st, 2006, and we had 3 families call us within just the first week. So we had immediate business. We were so blessed.
That's great.
Yes. Yeah. So I can't imagine how hard it would be, trying to start from scratch if you truly didn't know anyone or have, something to build on. But as our building was actually building, we were out talking to people saying, hey, we're coming, and we were very young. I was 24 at that time, and he was 26. And we're building this huge business from the ground up. And so many people just were praying for us and had our back, and it was so cute. I still today have little old ladies that'll call me and say, I still have your first newspaper clipping from your very first advertisement. We just had the support of people like you would not believe.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Now, Legacy Funeral Home is in Saudi Daisy. Is that correct?
Correct. Uh-huh.
So what is it, right in the middle of Saudi, or is it kind of, what I mean? Is it more toward Hickson, or?
We bought 3 lots when we purchased our land, and 2 of them are in Saudi Daisy and one's in Hickson. So we are right on the line. We're like in the Lakeside area, kind of, if you know where Lakeside is.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And then Wann Funeral Home is what's the address for it? Because I can't remember what part of town it's in.
We're at the foot of Lookout Mountain. So there at the bottom of the incline, that's where we are.
Okay. Right towards the St. Elmo's area, south side area, right in there. Okay. Yeah. All right. And Wann has been around a long time. So how did that come about that you wound up purchasing that funeral home?
So, they were established in 1902. So they are the oldest funeral home in Chattanooga. And also, they always have been locally owned. Yeah. But John Hargis owned that funeral home at the time that we purchased it in 2013. And he was ready to retire and sell, but he also wanted to keep it with a locally owned family. He didn't want to sell to a corporation because the Chattanooga market is so saturated with corporate presence. And so it was just kind of, I would go down there and help John out and work for him if he was out of town and things like that. And it just kind of worked out for us to be able to buy that business also. And it was exciting. Speaking of women, Mrs. Wann, which of course I didn't know her. She would be, over 100 now, but she was such a boss lady back years ago. Like, we have a lot of their things that they had, and where she was writing the checks, and where she was running that place with an iron fist. And it's so beautiful to look back and be like, this woman did this like 80 years ago, so she was a boss.
And so in 2006, was it that you started the one in Saudi, the Legacy? Is that what you said, 2006? What year did you purchase the one?
2013.
2013. Okay. Mm-hmm. 7 years later, you purchased one. And then now let's talk about what you're doing for people's fur babies. When did you decide to start this?
So I've always wanted to start it, but I just didn't. The timing wasn't right. I'm so busy with my businesses personally that I was like, how can I make this come about? And this wonderful man, his name's Mike Lang. He actually traveled around working on crematories. That was his job. And I have a human crematory. And we were just sitting there one night talking. He was repairing my crematory. And he said, I thought about getting in the pet cremation business. And I was like, wow, me too. But it's just too much of a bite for me to take on my own. Is this something you want to do together? And he said, yeah. And you know how you are talking to people, kind of, you're like, really, is this going to happen? And Mike was not playing around. I mean, he called me like a week later and said, hey, I found a crematory for us to buy. I'm ready. And so we got it going, and we've been open for about 3 months. And the community has asked for this for a long time because there's nothing like that in our market. Yeah. And we have just been so busy with that pet business. That's
great. Well, I know I was talking to somebody one time about how much different it is today than it was when I was young. You know, people today look at animals as their babies. When I was young, it was more like, you know, that was the animal that stayed outside in the yard. And so it's come a long way, you know, the way people look at their animals and all. So I think it's great that you have a place like that, you know, and you're right. There is a need for that. Absolutely.
Thank you so much. I'm so sorry.
So I think it's great. But you know, I one of the things too, I want to talk about something fun. And then I want to go back to talking about your business. So another thing I read in the article is, and you probably hear this all the time, but another thing I read in the article that kind of amazed me, I thought it said that you are a member of the roller derby in Chattanooga. And it's kind of funny. I've always wanted to go watch roller derby. And I had no idea that Chattanooga had one until I was reading this article about you. And they said you remember the roller. So I'd like to tell us about that. Tell us how you wound up getting into that and how long you've been doing it. And, you know, just tell us about it.
It's the craziest story how I got into it. I did not even know what roller derby was. And it truly changed my life. So if anybody is ever thinking about playing roller derby that's listening to this, go do it, because it is something that probably one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. But so kind of a funny story. I was going to a massage therapist. I was young. I was like 29, and I was going to a massage therapist, and she told me, she said, you are literally a ball of muscle. She said, you should try out for the roller derby. And I was like, what? I didn't even know what it was. So I go home and I like look it up online, and I see these girls. I mean, they have like hot pink hair and they're tattooed and they look so cool. And then here I am, like, boring. And sure enough, they had a recruitment meeting the next evening. So I was like, I'm going to go check these people out. So I went, and they were just as cool as I thought they were going to be, you know? And so I came back home and I put on my Facebook, I said, I'm going to try out for the Chattanooga Roller Girls. What do you guys think? And the comments, it pops up on my time hop every year, and I love to read it because it's like, you're too pretty, you'll break a nail, you're going to get your butt kicked. There's no way. I mean, it was just, the comments are hilarious.
Yeah.
I said at that time, you know, don't tell me that I can't do something, because I will prove it.
You'll do it.
Yes. So I just did it to prove to the world I could do it. But then I fell in love with it so much that here I am, gosh, like 14 years later, almost 13, 14 years later, and I'm still playing. I'm one of the oldest skaters on the team, but I still love it. And I still just find that passion. I'm not someone that loves to work out, but I love to skate, and I love my teammates and the competition of it. And when you get ready to come, Scott, let me know. I'll hook you up with some tickets.
Well, thank you. Yeah, that's, you know, you said you're not working, but my goodness, I mean, that's a pretty good workout in itself as far as calorie burning and things like that. You know, it's a pretty good workout.
Yes, it's the only working out I enjoy. I should say that.
I was a real good skater when I was young, but now when I tried on a pair of rollerblades once, and I'm gonna say once, and with an emphasis, after I crashed and burned with the rollerblades, I decided that I needed 4 wheels, not 2. You know, I need those extra wheels. I think it sounds fun. I thought it was awesome. I just thought it was awesome that here's this successful businesswoman, you know, that I'm sure at the funeral home, everything's formal and you're making sure everything's comfortable. But on the flip side, go check her out the roller derby.
Yes, it's true. It's so true, because people are shocked when they find out that I play roller derby. They're like, there's no way. And then they want to come see me. You would not believe how many of the families that we've served that want to come, and bring their family out.
Yeah.
It's a very family friendly event. And of course, I give them tickets. The funeral home sponsors the league,
Yeah.
and they just have a great time. So I think it makes me a little
like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Well, and thank you for sharing that with us. I love that story. I want to bring it back for just a moment to the funeral business again. Now, we talked about your journey. We talked about how you got into the business and all that, which is an incredible story. I don't think anybody will ever have as good a story as you do about the way it come about. But I like before we end the podcast, I like to talk about Shawn Williamson's heart for a moment. So you mentioned when you were working for the family at your hometown that you really loved taking care of people, that you're very empathetic and you really love that. But now here we go. I'm not trying to date you here, but according to your age, you were telling me, you're coming up on what, almost 30 years of being in the funeral home business and, getting close to 30. And has that deepened or changed or whatever down through the years? And now that you're the owner of one, so you're not only just helping families, but you're in the background having to run it too, take care of all the business and everything too. How's it changed for you down through the years?
I think as I've gotten older, I actually am getting pinned my 25-year pin this August. So I'll be out of college for 25 years.
25 years. I was talking about from the time you were 14. I apologize.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I was talking about that time period.
I have grown so much, and it's kind of funny. The funeral home that I worked for in my hometown, it was also ran by a woman. Her and her husband had divorced, and so that's really rare for a female funeral home owner. And she was such a role model and a person for me to look up to and just see how she ran her business. And I used to see her sit there and straighten a person's pants 100 times, or comb their hair just one more time, or just make it just everything perfect. And when I was young, I was like, okay, like how long can you sit here and do this, But now I understand that because it's my business and I treat every single person as if they were my own family member. I mean, and it just really, to give you an example, I feel like I get a little more empathetic every year, but we had a song played on a funeral the other day, and every part of the song I had encountered in my life too, except for my mother passing. This girl's mother had passed. And it just broke my heart to listen to that because I'm so empathetic. It put me in her spot, but I don't ever want to lose that either. I want to be able to be that person and feel what they feel, because the day it becomes a job to you is the day you have to walk away from it, because these families deserve the very best. They deserve someone that cares.
Me and Jamie were talking about how that there's different types of emotions. Some people, they try to, not break down in front of anybody. They strive to hold themselves together and not show a lot of emotion. And some people, they just don't care. Who care? They let that emotion go because that's not important to them, what other people think about them. They care. It's not that there's anything wrong with either one of them. There's just different types of people. And when people come in, I said, now, Jamie, I've never had children of my own, so I only can attest to what I've heard other people say. But I've always heard people say that when you have kids, they're not all the same, and you have to learn how to deal with each one. And so I think it is so in your business, and Jamie agreed too, when people come in, you kind of have to gauge what they're like and help them on their level.
Absolutely.
If somebody can't be empathetic, if they can't be understanding, if they're just cold and business-like when people come in, there's a good possibility that family is not going to come back. And I know with a funeral home, what you hope is that you can make that impression, and then generations of people, even after Shawn Williamson is gone on to heaven, and whoever has taken over, you're hoping they'll still coming back. Generations, because your staff is taking care of them, so I guess I appreciate that in you, what I'm hearing, because I know when I lost my wife, it was a very difficult time, and I needed somebody to be patient with me. I had too many decisions to make in 24 hours.
Absolutely.
Too many. Some of them I look back now and I wish that I'd made differently. I wish I'd made different, but I had to make them right then. And I needed somebody to be patient with me. And thankfully, the people where I grew up is where we took her back to, and took her back and buried her. But those people were patient. They were understanding, and it would have been made the process so much difficult if I hadn't had that. So
Absolutely.
the fact that you have that empathy means a lot.
And Scott, that warms my heart to know that you were treated well and in good hands, because we don't always hear that all the time. And Jamie and I are, we are strong for our families, but there's sometimes after a funeral behind closed doors, I mean, both of us will be crying because it's just, we've been carrying that load and that burden that whole week too, So it's definitely a business that we take home with us. We live it, but we have to be those people that care.
My most fond memory of being in a funeral home, I'll just share this with you, was my late wife's grandfather died. And he was a pastor of a church, had been for a number of years, well known in the community, had attended and preached over a lot of people that this funeral home had taken care of. And so when he passed away, they opened him up, and for the family to come in and view him, had an hour of private family time, and they reviewed him. And the whole time, this one funeral director, he wasn't the owner, he just worked there, and he knew members of the family, and he knew the pastor very well. And he stood there at attention, almost like he was in the military. Stood at attention at the end of that casket while each member of the family came forward and saw him for the first time. And while he was standing there at attention, tears streaming down his face. And I'll never forget that. And people, that family talked about that for a long time, how that touched their hearts and really made an impression on them. And that kind of empathy is what's needed at this point in time, when people are suffering and going through this. So I have to say, I've never been in your funeral home yet, but I feel like from whenever I ever do that, this is what I'm going to see. That's what I'm going to see is the same type of empathy, because you and Jamie both have made a large impression on me, but just by talking with you. But not only that, for you to be successful, starting from scratch and being successful and continuing to be successful, tells me that you're doing something right. And if you didn't, people would shy away from you and go somewhere else. And it sounds like that people are getting what they need when they come there. And that's no doubt from you, that empathy, and also from Jamie, those many years of counseling that he, had in church. He brings it to the job too. And your many years of experience and helping people, y'all combining together, I'm sure is just getting people as good of experience as they know how as they can, how to receive. But if I always like to ask this question anytime I come close to the end of a podcast, and just ask one question. If there was one thing that you wish that people knew about Shawn Williamson and her heart at Legacy Funeral Home, but they probably wouldn't know unless you told them. I'm talking about families that have never come there and experienced your services. What would that be?
Well, the main thing that I wish that everyone knew, and I mean, you have to be so aware of it in any business, but that we're locally owned business. And so spending your money with us keeps your money right here at home. I mean, I go out and support other local businesses like crazy. I mean, I support my local vet with my 5 dogs. I support as much local as I can. Yeah. And we are completely surrounded by corporate competition. So when you send your money to those funeral homes, not only are you sending your money out of town, it's publicly traded on the stock market. And I'm not saying you're not going to get a good service at those places. You do get less service for the amount of money that you spend. We are more priced fairly because we answer to our community. We don't have to answer to stockholders and things like that. Right. Yeah. But we always say, and if someone does choose another funeral home or to go somewhere else, I know that they would not be cared for like they would with us, because they truly become our family when they call us. They have my personal cell phone number. You can call me at 9:00 at night if you need something. You get Jamie's personal cell phone number. I mean, our families become family to us. Like Jamie always tells people, we're hugaholics and we don't have any plans to take recovery for it. So, we want you to feel loved and cared for during that time. And not only during that time, every day after that. We have people that just come by and want to have a cup of coffee and say hi and, how are you doing? And so it's your family. Once you choose us, you're part of our family. You're not going anywhere.
If people are coming by to just say hi and have a cup of coffee, then you made an impression on them.
Yeah.
People just don't do that. They don't do their plumber that way. They don't do their just stop by and have a cup of coffee. But that you have made a deep impression upon them. I worked one time years ago. I worked for a company that funeral homes were their client, and in that they provided, you might even work with some of these companies. They provide a memorial book that goes to the families when they pass away. I worked for one of those companies, I was amazed at the thank you cards that we would get from people. But I explained it like this: being that I had experience in loss like that, it's that you're the most vulnerable time of your life. And when people reach out and do the smallest thing, it makes the biggest impression, just a huge impression upon you that it just is. You can't get it out of your head sometimes, out of your heart. When somebody just does a little something, just send a card. Sorry we couldn't make it there, but we just wanted you to know we cared. I still kept all those cards that were sent to me. They mean the world to me, and so yeah, I really appreciate what y'all do. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
community. And yes, absolutely. And Shawn, I want to give just a moment for you to share any contact information that you would like, online or offline. If there's social media, anything like that people can go see and find out more about you or contact you. You don't have to give your cell number out here if you don't want to. You just give a way that people can reach out to you and when they do need your services or they want to find out more before that time might come.
Sure, absolutely. And I was going to reply to what you were saying about that, how you make people feel. There's a saying of people will never remember what you say to them, but they'll always remember how you made them feel. And just like you said, those people, you remember the people that did those things and how they made you feel during that time, but you couldn't probably repeat one thing they said to you. And so that's our goal, is just to make people feel loved and welcome and, held up during those times. But
yeah, absolutely. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, absolutely. You can find us on the web, of course, wannfuneralhome.com or legacyfuneralhome.com. We also have social medias on both of those, Facebook, and our emails are on there. You can contact us that way, but we would love to hear from you. You can call and ask questions. I mean, we have people call us every day and ask a lot of, especially cremation. It's on the rise, and we have our own crematory. So that's very important to a lot of people. And our facility is also open to the public to see. A lot of people are like, well, I want to see your crematory and that it's running and where my loved one's going to be and things like that. So, we're open book. Anytime anybody has any questions or anything, they can reach out to us 24 hours a day. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Did you provide the contact information that you wanted people to know?
Yeah, our website or our emails are on our website or our Facebook, correct. Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you. I just want to make sure you got everything out there that you wanted. And
Absolutely.
Thank you so much again, Shawn, for being with us today and for being part of the Good Neighbor podcast.
Thank you, Scott, for having me.
Absolutely. And to all the good neighbors of the greater Chattanooga area, after meeting with Shawn and learning more about the funeral homes that she owns and takes care of, I know that she hopes you'll consider her when you need those services that they provide. Again, I'd encourage you to also go over and listen to the podcast where her general manager, Jamie Eggert, I did an interview with him as well. And I think you'll agree with me. You can hear the passion in their voices. And, and because they're locally owned, that's why that I'm having them on the program. That's what the Good Neighbor podcast is all about. We're trying to spotlight the locally owned businesses that really need our support. And, like she said, there's other places you can go, but when you go to places that people, when they live in that community and their vested interest is in the community, and like she said, she's trying to support other locally owned businesses with her personal dollar as well. it means something to when we do that, when we support people who are struggling to stay afloat in the good economies, bad economies, whatever it is. They're still trying to be out there for me and you to provide those things that we need. So, and before ending this episode, I'd like to thank you, all the listeners, for taking time out of your busy day to visit with us at the Good Neighbor Podcast. And always remember, I always say this, to support the locally owned and operated businesses in the greater Chattanooga area, from Cleveland to Dalton, from Jasper to Benton, and everywhere in between. Let's remember these businesses. This is Scott Howell with the Friends and Neighbors Group. Everyone go out and make this a remarkable day.
Thank you for listening to the Good Neighbor Podcast. To nominate your favorite local businesses to be featured on the show, go to gnpcleveland.com. That's gnpcleveland.com or call 423-380-1984.